On stumps of day one of the second test match between New Zealand and Australia, it looked like New Zealand had no chance of winning the game. Stumps on day three, it kind of looked like Australia didn't have much of a chance of winning. And from there, New Zealand somehow managed to lose that game and Australia would end up winning. And then somehow New Zealand ended up losing that game, which meant that Australia won both the games 2-0.
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
But it was a tight test match that kept your head on a swivel all the way through. And that is usually just enough for test match cricket. But this match means a lot to New Zealand fans, of course, as they have to live in a world where they seemingly lose every important match to Australia on an endless loop. But to the Aussies particularly, this game meant something completely different. Because if New Zealand had stolen that game, not only would they have not won another away series, more importantly than that, their World Test Championship points that they probably had penciled in would have disappeared. Remember, they had already drawn a series against England that they were up early in against, and then they had played the West Indies as well, and they wouldn't have even penciled that down as a win. They would have marked it down with permanent pen. Can you get a permanent pen? They would have written it down with permanent marker because they were so sure that they were going to beat the Windies at home. So when Alex Carey helps Australia get to 281 for 7 with an incredible innings, he potentially saves his career, at least in the short term, but he also means it is a lot more likely that Australia is going to play in the World Test Championship final. Test matches used to just matter between the two teams that were playing them. Now, for those of us who care a little bit about the WTC, they have a wider purpose. There is a Reddit user called Andrew TIE Fighter, and I think that just for a moment we should think about that because it might be the greatest handle that anyone's ever had in cricket internet. But incredibly, I'm not mentioning this person because of that handle, but actually this, the Cricket 11 World Test Championship predictor. The ICC actually had one for maybe the first or the second tournament, which allowed you to go through and work out all the points and who might go through to the final or not. So now, Andrew TIE Fighter had to choose the light over the dark side and save our lives and allow us to do this, because if I had to do it manually, it would bust my head. And I am sure there are mistakes here, not because Andrew TIE Fighter hasn't done a good job, because Andrew TIE Fighter would always do a good job, but more because things actually change in these schedules all the time. So there might be a couple of discrepancies all the way through. I haven't spotted any at the moment, and you can see that there's even an option for net run rate as well. But even if there are a couple of mistakes here, let's play around with this anyway, because it's a lot of fun. And what I really want to do is try and work out who's going to win. Now, quite clearly, there's no way of actually telling the future. If I could tell you which teams were going to win all these games, I would be a billionaire and I wouldn't need to do this video. So what I'm going to do is use my best guesses, having a look at, recent history and how these teams travel to these different places. At the end of that, we might know who is most likely to be in the World Test Championship final. All right, so let's start with this. Let's go Bangladesh and Sri Lanka 1-1. I think at home, England should clean up the West Indies, but I can see West Indies and South Africa splitting that series when they play at home. Pakistan should beat Bangladesh at home, but with those pitches, I'm always going to put a draw in there as well. England should beat Sri Lanka at home, and as much as I want to give a test to Bangladesh here because of Shanto, I'm not going to. I'm going to say that India will win that series 2-0. The Kiwis should be able to split the series against Sri Lanka, although I'm not massively confident on that one. Pakistan cannot be as bad as they were against England last time, but I still think England will win that series. I'm tempted to put a draw in here, but England do not play draws. I cannot see how India will not beat New Zealand 3-0. Bangladesh should be a really big test for their South African batters, who let's be honest, are not particularly the best when travelling around, or at home, or when batting. This one we could go for hours trying to work out what we should do with India or Australia. This one we could go for hours about what we should do with Australia, India, but let's just be basic bitches here, and let's just go 3-2 to the home team. By the way, this West Indies-Bangladesh series probably has very little to do with the World Test Championship, but I will say, this could be a sneaky fun series. I don't know, let's just give them one each. New Zealand are hosting England at home again. Who knows what state either of these teams might be by this point. I'm going to go 1 to New Zealand and 2 to England. I mean, England should have won that series 2-0 last time. I think we're all in agreement that South Africa should beat Sri Lanka and South Africa should beat Pakistan, all at home, and the way that those teams travel, there's always a chance of Sri Lanka doing something remarkable. Pakistan, when they go to South Africa, generally don't. Pakistan should win their series against the West Indies, but you know I'm going to go draw again. And, okay, let's give Sri Lanka one test and Australia the other. I think that's about right. Now, you can argue with some of these games. There's no doubt that I will not get all of these right, but I've tried to go through and pick the most logical conclusions to see who is going to make the final. And you can see here, it's India or Australia. You can pick whichever one you think is going to win, but those are the two most likely to make the finals. So here is our points table over here. You can see obviously India qualify quite easily. And what about Australia? Well, they just get in above South Africa, and that includes their lost points for penalties. And I would say, looking at this table, Australia and England are the most likely teams to lose more points for slow over 8 penalties between now and the end of the tournament. So let's just have a look at New Zealand, because I want to focus on the fact that they are incredibly low here. Is there a way to go back into this and actually change the results a little bit and give more points to New Zealand? Could they win both games in Sri Lanka? I feel like that is incredibly unlikely. But let's just give them both wins for a moment without thinking too hard about it. India and New Zealand. This is an interesting one because we know that New Zealand did actually draw a game, and of recent times we've seen slightly flatter pitches in India. Let's be friendly and give them a draw in one of those matches as well. And then you've got New Zealand, England. Yes, England outplayed them before, but they were in the middle of the Bazball bubble at that point. New Zealand are not exactly storming the world at the moment, but there's no reason why in England, with perhaps an even more burst bubble turning up there, would only win one test. So let's give New Zealand 2 of those. And let's head back to the points table. Even when we head back to the points table and we do all that, we can still see that New Zealand is behind South Africa, so they are still 4th. So there's not going to be anything here that suggests that New Zealand is going to make the WTC final. All right, so we looked at the Kiwis. What about England? Because we could see that we had them 4th on the table. We've already got them winning all their matches against the West Indies, and we've already got them winning all their matches against Sri Lanka. So what else does England need to do? Well, I suppose they could also win all their games against Pakistan, right? They had a pretty good series there last time. And then it is also possible that they win all their games against New Zealand as well. And you can see that will put them into the final. The problem with this is they play in England, and so rain is an issue. And I've just said they're going to have to win all of their test matches from here on in. And as we said earlier, they're also playing in Pakistan. So draws are a possibility as well, just because the pitches are so flat. But even if England did actually push towards results, what are the chances that England win 12 in a row? That is a lot of test matches to win without a loss. I just can't see it happening. So it's probably not going to be them. What about Pakistan? I mean, they could just beat Bangladesh 2-0, right? And I suppose, having just seen what India did, I know it's different pitches and a slightly different situation, certainly not as good a team. But is it possible that after as bad as they were last time, they could actually beat England 2-1? Probably not, but let's just do this for a moment. And then, of course, you've got the West Indies at home. Okay, let's give them that win as well. Although I do think Craig Brathwaite could bat for about 23 days on some of those Pakistani pitches. But you can see they're still short, so we have to give them one more game. Is it possible in any way that Pakistan could beat South Africa as well? Probably not. But that is what gets them into the finals. And of course, this is the dream scenario for the ICC, because this would mean that India and Pakistan are most likely teams to play each other in the final, which would be exactly what the WTC actually needs, but it's not going to happen because I don't think they can beat South Africa. And even if they do, I don't think they can win all those other games that I suggested either. So the only realistic option that we could see here is going to be South Africa getting in ahead of India or Australia. The problem with that is their batting is shaky, and that is the friendliest term I can use when discussing South African batting, because it's really bad. And that is why I believe the West Indies can beat South Africa in this test, because I think the West Indies bowlers are good enough to group a bunch of wickets together, especially on their surfaces, and win a game. But for the sake of this, let's just give that win to South Africa. They are certainly the better team, and you can see straight away that helps them a lot. Then we've got the Bangladesh-South Africa series. I've got that 1-1 at the moment. They haven't played each other in Bangladesh since 2015. They were completely different. Well, it's a completely different generation for both teams. Also, the pitches were very different in Bangladesh at that point. I still think it's pretty unlikely they'll win both of these tests. But because they're already past Australia, we don't need to be as punchy with those results. If they did win this test, they look even better. But Let's just say that they don't. And so with that, all we have to do is look at the fact that they're going to win one extra game than what I originally had, which I think is doable. And that gives them a very, very good chance of actually going through to this final. However, the team that they displaced was clearly Australia. So do actually need to go back and have a look at Australia because they've got a lot of games right at the end of this cycle. You can see that they have 5 test matches against India. Let's just go down to a far less important series, which is going to be Sri Lanka versus Australia. You can see at this point, Sri Lanka is 8th on the table. So if we say that Australia wins 5 of those 7 games and they win against Sri Lanka, that is actually not enough for them to go up. They end up 3rd and they are still just behind South Africa. So all of this stuff before does suggest though that South Africa have to win a lot of games. But in order to keep Australia behind them, it does mean that South Africa have to win an awful lot of games. 7 out of 8. In the last 3 years, they have an 11-9 record. So that would seem pretty far-fetched, right? But all their losses are actually against the better teams. So they're about to play 2 friendly sides at home and 2 lower-ranked ones away. And in truth, it might actually be more hilarious if they come up just short and miss out on another ICC final, this time because they sent their F team to New Zealand while the SA20 was being played. But the team who's been the top of the World Test Championship table with almost every different permutation that we've tried has been India. What if they don't play quite as well as we believe they're going to? I still find it very hard to believe that Bangladesh is going to beat them in India, so I'm happy to keep India 2-0 there. What about India-New Zealand? If they have flatter wickets, which is always a possibility after what they've just played against England, we have seen of recent times New Zealand draw a match in India. So let's have them draw a match. And you can see they go from 1st to 2nd, right? But the key series is still Australia-India. We have Australia-India as 3-2 automatically. What if we swap that over? India is very, very clear again. But as good as India has been in Australia of recent times, it's probably still the most likely result is 3-2 in favour of Australia. If it was 3-2 in favour of India, there is no issue here. Even if Australia beat Sri Lanka twice, they can't get past them. What if this test is just a draw? And what if it's 2-2 and there's a draw? And then Australia manages to beat Sri Lanka twice. India still hold firm. But what if Australia win 3 and there is a draw? And then Australia managed to beat Sri Lanka? Well, you can see, then it's an Australia-South Africa final. In fact, let's just try one last thing for fun. Remember this draw we gave? Let's just give it back to India. All right, so India or South Africa are in here. But what if Australia win this series 4-1? Again, Australia go in, and that's even without the need for Australia to win both the tests against Sri Lanka. The truth is that this Border Gavaskar Trophy, which is already the most hyped and talked about series in world cricket anyway, is actually going to be supersized because of the World Test Championship table. Both of these teams might be playing for a chance to make the final against each other, or make the final at all if South Africa do really well. But what's even more amazing is the Australia-Sri Lanka series, which to be honest is not that followed in Australia as a general rule, and is going to be a competition between the 8th team and maybe a team in the top 2, or certainly somewhere around the top 3, suddenly becomes a lot more important, right? So that means as incredibly intense and overhyped and talked about as Australia-India series will be, there is very much a possibility that the most important series will come right at the last moment, and it'll be between Sri Lanka and Australia, a series that Australians don't even always take that seriously, but they might have to because Australia will have to win it 2-0 to get in. I mean, we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. We're just looking at this the same as everyone else and trying to work out what will happen next. But what I can say is this. This Australia-India series is going to be something that could actually mean the WTC is more important than it has ever been before. The finals usually get our attention. The problem isn't the finals though, is it? It's the fact that the rest of the series is completely convoluted and it's hard for people to follow. Do you know what's not hard to follow? The 2 best teams at cricket might be playing a 5-test series where the winner of that series might be the one who gets a chance to go on and win the title. If the WTC needs anything outside of a really engaging final to make it work, it is the 2 best teams and also the 2 biggest rivals playing against each other for the chance to win their silverware. I mean, remember when the Border Gavaskar Trophy made Steve Smith marking a guard one of the biggest stories in cricket for a couple of days? If it can do that for literally someone putting their toe in the dirt, what on earth can it do for the World Test Championship?